Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Once in a while, we hear about one of those stories where you think, well, that's the end of that story. And no, it gets worse. And then it gets worse. And you ask yourself, wait, that story, how did it get worse? Well, I did this story a while back about the woman in Atlanta who came back from vacation to discover that a home she owned was destroyed. It was demolished. And it turns out that mistakes were made. Now, it was not her primary residence. So that's one part of the story that we have to be clear about. She owned another house, and the house was boarded up, but she says that she kept the yard clean. It was neat. It was not in violation of anything. And somebody came by, and they were supposed to demolish a house, but apparently they got the wrong address. And so she got, I believe, a phone call from somebody who said, hey, did you know that your house is being knocked down right now? And so she went over there, and to unravel the story, she discovered that, again, it was a demolition crew that had simply gotten the wrong house. So you ask yourself, well, how could that get worse, Steve? I mean, the house got demolished. I mean, come on. A lot of people sent me the story from Fox 5 Atlanta. Atlanta, the city, threatens citations for a woman who found her home was demolished during vacation. So they've come by and they put up some of those hate mail notices they give you where they say you're about to get in trouble unless you straighten something out. And they slapped those on the site where her home was demolished, saying she better hurry up and clean up that mess or she's in trouble. Eric Perry wrote this, and the Atlanta woman who came home from vacation to find an older home on her property was demolished without her permission is now facing new legal trouble. The TV station first reported that the woman found her home demolished accidentally by a construction company back in October. So she recently visited the property and found a notice from the city of Atlanta threatening to issue citations because of the mess and for not filing the proper permits for the demolition in the first place. See, it turns out you need to get permits to demolish something. So her home got demolished and she never pulled the permits. So there's a violation. And then to leave the demolition in this half-finished state because the demolition crew, when they realized they were at the wrong place, just got up and left. And they left behind the half-demoed house, which, of course, is a nightmare. So she found that notice, and she said, anybody I can think of, I've just been reaching out to. Everyone wants to play ball, but nobody wants to show up. She says the company that tore down the home claimed they had the wrong address, which very well could be true. That doesn't mean it's not their job to clean this up. The story made headlines across the country, and some criticized her because the house was older and was, in fact, boarded up. But the house was structurally sound, apparently, and it was legal the way it was. And I've seen homes that have been boarded up because no one's there and they wanted to secure the house that later got restored and people live there. And that's something that you hope to do. And so if there's a house with nobody living in it and it becomes obvious and the windows aren't boarded up, then people smash the windows out. And that's worse, trust me. So she says, I get what they're saying. I get that the house is boarded up and people probably would love to have it down. That's fine. But he didn't have permission to do it. That's the problem, referring to the demo crew. So now a new problem has emerged from the ruins. Usually on trash day, she says, I walk around the lot and clean up the yard, and this bright yellow sign was in the middle of my backyard. And I noticed it said, stop work order, as if she's working there. It said I had until the 16th to fix it, clean it up, and get it all done and have the proper permits. Now, by the 16th, I think she means November. I think the date had already come and gone. So she said she's been trying to get in contact with the city to get an explanation, or at least to let them know what's happening. And she said the house is a fun place. We always had a lot of good times here. Emotions flood in as a reminder of her husband who died years ago. It does very much so because he's gone, and now this is gone. So she's stuck with a mess and a legal problem because the city now says they might come after her. She said, it's still just like, yeah, they tore it down and they did me a favor, but this is what I got. This is the favor that they gave me. Now, TV station Fox 5 reached out to the Atlanta Department of City of Planning. Officials issued the following statement. The Department of City Planning, Office of Buildings, issued a notice of correction on the property on November 2nd with a correction end date of November 16th. That means that they notified them on the 2nd by posting on the property site, you got 2 weeks to clean this up. The correction notice affords the property owner the opportunity to bring the property into compliance. No citation has been issued to date. The structure on the property was demolished without a permit, which is a violation of city code. The property owner is responsible for their property and for any violations that occur pertaining to that property. The demolition of the property without the owner's consent or knowledge is not a matter for the city of Atlanta. This is considered a civil matter between the property owner and the alleged responsible party. The city of Atlanta says, look, we're the city. Somebody calls and said, hey, there's a big old mess on this site. There used to be a house there. House got torn down. So building inspector goes out and says, yeah, looks like a torn down building to me. They stopped halfway through for some weird reason. They slap up a notice saying you got to finish cleaning up this mess. And oh, by the way, you didn't pull a permit in the first place. Now, a lot of people are going to say, but Steve, it would be unfair to say that she's got to pull the permit, and that she's got to do this, and et cetera, et cetera. Well, unfortunately, that's sort of how it works. Now, in a perfect world, the people who came out and did the partial demo would contact her and say, look, we made a huge mistake. Can we at least try to make some of it better by cleaning up what's left of it, doing the rest? Because otherwise, she can hire someone to finish it and then sue the people who did the unauthorized demo to get her money back. And now, either way, she's out of house. But guess what? She can sue the demo people for that too. And so I'm a little surprised because there's no mentions here of her taking any legal action. And every attorney who hears this story goes, oh, this sounds like a law school exam. And I would start writing immediately all the people who I'm going to sue and for what. But the bulk of it is, yeah, you go find that builder who was demoing the house and you sue them. Now, here's the thing. If you're aware of how all this stuff works, to build a home, a bunch of permits. To tear a building down, a bunch of permits. You got to get a demolition permit to tear a house down. And it makes sense if you think about it, because a house, for instance, will have water lines running into it, sewer lines running out of it, and then possibly gas lines, right? Electricity and so on. And so if you have people who don't know what they're doing, just go in and knock a house down, things catch fire, things explode, that kind of thing. And so it's got to be done by somebody who knows what they're doing. And so the city will say, you got to pull a permit to let us know you're going to do it. They might come by and watch, but they'll certainly come by and check up on the work after the fact. And so to get a permit to do that, depending on where you are, might require that you have some qualifications to do what you're asking to do. So if you walk into the building department to get a demo permit, which seems ironic, they might actually ask, oh, are you a company that does this? And it might be that you've got to be licensed. And it might be that you've got to be bonded or insured. And I'm curious to know if the company that came out and did the unauthorized partial demo, whether they were licensed, bonded, and or insured. Because if they are, that's a pretty straightforward lawsuit. Because if this guy's defense is, I got the wrong address, that's not a defense. That just shows it wasn't done maliciously. But it's still wrong. So I'm very, very sympathetic for the woman and the situation she's in. It's through no fault of her own. But the problem is, from the city's viewpoint, they're like, hey, look, there's this property that you own. It's a mess. Clean it up. And so, unfortunately, I am not in Georgia. But this is the kind of thing where I would guess an attorney could get involved in pretty quickly. And the real question you need to ask is the demo company still in existence, and are they collectible? So unfortunately, depending on what state you're in, some of these things aren't licensed that carefully, and it ain't that hard to set up an LLC and create a little shell that operates for a little while. And then when you screw up something that's going to hurt your bottom line, you very quickly yank the plug on the LLC and run away, and you start another one. And so I don't know what the situation is in Georgia or specifically in Atlanta, whether or not that can happen. But unfortunately, I know from 32 years of practicing law, and also I used to handle cases against builders, and I sued quite a few of them. And that's one of those entity groups that I described where you can get a judgment against them. It's a piece of paper. And a piece of paper ain't going to help this woman. But like I said, I'm kind of surprised that there's no reference at all to any legal actions here, because it sounds like she's hoping to go out and clean it up herself. But that's not going to work, at least on the timeline that the city of Atlanta wants to see. So it's a horrible story. But she went out of town. When she came back, a home she owned was demolished partially. Wasn't her primary residence, so that's at least the one bright lining here. And then now the city's saying that building you didn't pull a permit for to demolish, we need you to finish the demolition or we're going to start fining you and so on. Because the last thing I need to mention here is that quite often the cities, the municipalities, or whoever's in charge will look at a situation like this and say, okay, we gave you the warning, you ignored the warning, you didn't clean it up, we're going to clean it up at our cost and hand you the bill. And trust me, that's the most expensive option here. So if the guy who started the job finished it, that would actually be the cheapest way out for her. If she hires someone to finish it, well, that'll cost her some money. But if the city finishes it, that's going to cost her a lot of money. And also there might be court appearances in there because it might involve citations and civil infractions and things of that nature. So unbelievable story out of Atlanta. Atlanta threatens citations for a woman who found her home was demolished during a vacation. Eric Perry wrote that for Fox 5 Atlanta, and a lot of people sent it to me. Thanks a lot. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. If truth is beauty, how come no one has their hair done in the library?